All right. Are we ready?
We are whenever you are, Councilmember.
You are?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Good morning. I'm at-large Council Member Anita Bonds, Chairperson of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. The time is 10:04 a.m. on Thursday, the 19th of May, year 2022. We are meeting virtually via Zoom to convene a public hearing on Bill 24-0620, the Juneteenth Establishment Act of 2022, which was introduced by Council members Alan Henderson, Louis George, Nadeau, Robert White, Gray, McDuff,
Councilmember, you're muted now. There you go.
Should I start over?
Probably 30 seconds before they started muting. You can start over, yes.
All right, okay. Well,
Okay,
good morning. I'm at-large Council Member Anita Bonds, Chairperson of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. The time is 10:04 a.m. on Thursday, the 19th of May, 2022. We are meeting virtually via Zoom to convene a public hearing on Bill 24-620, the Juneteenth History and Planning Commission Establishment Act of 2022, which was introduced by Council members Alan Henderson, Louis George, Nadeau, Robert White, Gray, McDuffie, Shea, Trayon White, Pinto, Silverman, Chairman Mendelson, and myself on the 22nd of January, 2022. This hearing is streaming live and is being recorded on the committee's YouTube channel named HEA Committee. Last summer, Congress approved the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, establishing the 19th of June as a national holiday, and Mayor Bowser and the council followed suit by closing district government offices. Juneteenth is a celebration of June 19th, 1865, when enslaved Black Americans
Councilmember, you just got muted again.
All right, please, audience, I apologize for the faulty situation we're encountering with our device this morning. I am not touching anything to mute anything, so I'm really worried. All right, we will continue. Juneteenth is a celebration of June 19th, 1865, when enslaved Black Americans in Galveston, Texas, received word that slavery had been abolished. More than 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and 3 months after the formal end of the Civil War. On that date, Major General Gordon Gaynor read General Order Number 3, announcing that slavery had been abolished and stating in part that the end of legal slavery in the United States involved an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former enslavers and enslaved people. More than 150 years later, we still strive to make that statement true, in part by remembering and fully understanding our history. Accordingly, this legislation establishes the District of Columbia Juneteenth History and Planning Commission to plan for activities in celebration of Juneteenth in the District of Columbia and to educate the public about the history of Juneteenth, not only in the district, but across the United States. This commission would plan an annual celebration and coordinate year-round education about Juneteenth and Black history more broadly, and it includes as members of the commission, the director of the African American Civil War Museum, representatives from the district's historically Black colleges and universities, the director of the Office on African American Affairs, and 15 community representatives, 2 nominated by the mayor and 1 nominated by each council member. Several district agencies would send non-voting representatives to work with the commission, ensuring that it receives well-rounded support from the district government. I look forward to hearing from all public and government witnesses regarding this important issue and how the commission plans to educate the whole country, particularly here in the District of Columbia, on the history of Juneteenth. I ask that you keep your remarks today to 3 minutes or less for an individual and 5 minutes or less for an organization, to allow all of our witnesses the opportunity to be heard. And with that said, I would like to note that your entire written testimony will be a part of the record. So if you have not submitted it, please email it to housing@dccouncil.us. At this time, I want to recognize my colleagues, and I'll start by recognizing Council Member Charles Allen and give him an opportunity to make a statement if he cares to at this time. Council Member Allen.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Bonds. First off, let me thank you for holding the hearing today and for moving this bill forward. I really appreciate that. I'm not a member of the committee, so I'm just kind of dropping in here, but I want to thank you and your staff for making today happen. I'm also excited about the possibility of a Juneteenth commission in the district to help honor this date, to help educate residents about its importance, and yes, plan for the celebrations, appropriate celebrations marking this now federal holiday. You already outlined, and I appreciate you doing that, what June 19th, 1865 is and what it represents. But I think there's something you talked about, which is really important, that we find ourselves 150 years later, still not actually achieving what it was that was said to take place on June 19th. And so Juneteenth can be and should be that moment that we recognize the unfinished business in addition to the celebration of what it represents. So I appreciate the way in which you outline that. I appreciate all my colleagues co-introduced this legislation, and I developed the legislation in partnership with my good friend, Charles Hicks, who's the founder and director of the DC Black History Celebration Committee, as well as Dr. Frank Smith, our former Ward 1 council member and executive director of the African American Civil War Museum. I want to be sure that they are noted as the leaders behind this initiative, which brought it forth to us here at the council. You also already outlined a great job of talking about how the commission would work, how representatives would be selected to make sure that it could do its work, and then what it would be charged with. Last summer, Congress approved the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, making June 19th a national holiday. And obviously Mayor Bowser and the council followed suit by closing district government offices and recognizing it on the local level. Last year I joined Councilmember Gray and 9 other members introducing the Juneteenth Day Amendment Act of 2021, which the council eventually made formal through the Budget Support Act. And the District Juneteenth History and Planning Commission, I think, would make the district a leader among other states, and I hope would maybe be a place that other states would look to as an example in how we help honor the history of Juneteenth, taking advantage of our wealth of advocates and academics who can help support the commission's mission. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses today and looking forward to seeing the legislation move forward. Unfortunately, I'm not able to stay for the full hearing due to another conflict, but I have complete confidence in your leadership, Ms. Bonds, to carry this effort through and stand ready to assist you in any way that you need. So thank you very much, and appreciate all the testimony we're about to hear as well.
Well, thank you very much, Councilmember Allen, and thank you for your foresight of working with Mr., as I call him, Mr. History, Black History in the District of Columbia, Chuck Hicks, and certainly the head of our museum. So thank you very, very much for that. All right. Do we have any, I do not see any additional colleagues at the moment. So now we will turn to our panel of public witnesses. And that is the Honorable Frank Smith, Mr. John Peterbug Matthews, Mr. Michael Tolson Banner, Mr. Thomas Blanton, and Mr. Carl M. Adams. And so we will start with the Honorable Frank Smith. Good morning to everyone. Welcome.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Bond. My name is Frank Smith. I'm the founding director of the African American Civil War Memorial and Museum here in Washington. And of course, for many years, I joined you and others where you sit and enjoyed a brief time in office here in the district. For the last several years, I've been running the African American Civil War Memorial with the outstanding support of my colleagues on the council. And I want to say now publicly, as I always do, that I appreciate all the strong support you've given us here. Hope we've done much to earn your support and your respect. In sum and substance, Juneteenth had its origins in June 19th, 1865, in a small town in Galveston, Texas, when a Union Army General Granger lands a flotilla of ships containing at least 6,000 United States colored troops, battle-tested soldiers who have been involved in combat around Richmond, Virginia, and Petersburg, and one of the regiments that actually chased Robert E. Lee all the way to Appomattox and was there for his surrender. The war is over now, but there's still some terrorists operating in Texas. So the United States Army decides to ship these regiments from the Petersburg area all the way down to past the Gulf of Mexico, past Alabama into Galveston, Texas, where they land. Now, when they get to Galveston, by now, you will remember President Lincoln has been assassinated. The war has ended on April 9th, 1864. President Lincoln was assassinated 4 days later. His funeral takes 12 days. They travel from Washington all the way to Springfield, Illinois. And then on May 22nd and 23rd, there is a grand review. 200,000 soldiers march down Pennsylvania Avenue. So there's been a whole national catharsis around the murder of president, and then there's been a celebration of the grand review. And yet we say here that in Galveston, Texas, in this little hamlet in Galveston, Texas, there's still some people who don't know about the Emancipation Proclamation and don't know about the Civil War has ended in a victory for the Union. And yet President Lincoln has said in his words that he said when he signed the proclamation, he said, "Let the proclamation go wherever the army goes." And the army was a little late getting to Galveston on June 19th, but they did get there. And when they got there, I'm sure the local people who saw this notice and saw these signs being placarded there were singing Jubilee and Glory Be and all of the things that you would expect. And so we have come now to the point where there's a national holiday, and I'm very proud to have been able to see this all come about as somebody who was born in the South myself and was part of the Civil Rights Movement. So it's another chance for us to celebrate. And I look forward to working with this commission as we tell this story about these African-American soldiers and about those people of Galveston too, who heard this at the very end of this war. And I think that this is a good thing for America, because right now, and I wanted to say this to Councilmember Allen, because I know he was the one that actually worked closely with Chuck on this. I didn't do much on it. Chuck just called me in the middle of the night and asked me about dotting an I and crossing a T, and I do the best I can. But Chuck, but I want to say thank you, because with this holiday now, America is going to celebrate the day when slavery actually ended here in the United States. It'll be interesting to see how this gets celebrated in all these states that are talking about trying to stop from teaching the critical race theory because they don't want us to teach about slavery. Well, if there was no slavery, how could it end on January 19th? If there was no slavery, how could it end? Why are we celebrating a national holiday for something that ended that never happened? Well, it did happen. And I think this will give us a chance to talk about it in a meaningful way. So I'm happy to be able to join here. And as usual, as you said, Councilmember Allen, Washington, D.C. is a city on the hill. People look to us for leadership in this area. And as we put together this commission here in Washington, D.C. and these programs, we expect other people to follow in our footsteps. So thank you very much for working with us on this. We look forward to working on it. And I look forward to playing some role in the execution of this particular commission. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Next, do we have Mr. Matthews in with us? No, Mr. Matthews. All right.
Sorry,
Mr.
hold on,
Ba-
Councilmember. He just entered,
All right.
just
Okay.
joined us, yeah.
All right. Mr. John Matthews, we affectionately know him as Peterbug in our community.
Mr. Matthews, you're muted.
I guess that's me.
Yes, now we
Is
can
this
hear
Peter Buck?
you.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody? All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for inviting me. And good morning to everyone here. You know, I like to, for folks who don't know my name, my name is Peter Bug Matthews. I operate a shoe repair training academy where I train young people how to fix and repair shoes. So I'm kind of a visionary doctor. I'm a soul fixer from the top to the bottom. So I just want you to know I'm more than this is kind of like up my alley because we have been doing Juneteenth Day, probably longer than folks could even recognize what was Juneteenth Day was all about. Those who was not aware of what happened in Texas, so we are glad that there is some kind of form of committee and hoping that some of the things that we have done for Juneteenth Day will be incorporated into with the ideas that is already or going to be announced or portrayed to the people or the citizens of Washington, D.C. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had to, because it's not that often I get to talk.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for, as you say, for years. I think almost 2 decades you have been orchestrating this kind of celebration. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Banner, Executive Director of the Peterbug Shoe Repair Academy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to acknowledge Councilmember Charles Allen. Thank you all for giving us an opportunity to espouse our beliefs, our spirits, our way of life that we have exemplified on Peterbug's Day. I just want to echo some of the things that Peterbug had mentioned regarding Peterbug's Day, which was eventually rolled into Juneteenth because it was part of Malcolm X Day as well as African Liberation Day. So all became rolled into one. I like to point out that we not only are looking at the historic day itself, but we would like to see encompassed and included in the celebration the rich culture of the city, from little girls jumping double dutch, from us playing marbles, from us playing kickball, from our music, from us hand dancing. All of this is part of the culture of Washington, D.C. And I think we need to have that incorporated as well as the history of Juneteenth. Now, Juneteenth shouldn't just be looked at as that day, giving us a historical remembrance. It should also be about that long struggle that continues so that we are continually to remove those barriers that consistently stops us from experiencing the full freedom of Americana, like redlining and gentrification. These things need to be part of the historical celebration. We need to include things that we will put in place to remedy these things and include the entire community so that it is a communal effort in us achieving those ends. We're not just talking about slavery or enslavement. We're talking about the celebration of freedom. And how do we get there? What vehicles do we use? Is it just the government who's forming this commission? Does it include the business community? Does it include the community at large? There is an intersection that must be utilized in order for us to achieve these ends. And it's not only about those enslavement, slavery ideas, it's about the full celebration as promulgated in the Emancipation Proclamation, as promulgated in the Constitution, as promulgated in the Bill of Rights, as promulgated as being just a human being and a citizen of the District of Columbia. These are some of the things that we would like to see incorporated. These are some of the things we would love the commission to encompass and take to heart, and utilizing this platform to create and formulate those kinds of programs around the city that will remind us and transform us into the kind of society that we all hold dear. I think former council member Frank Smith is doing a wonderful job with the African Civil Rights, the Civil War Museum. And he constantly promulgates our involvement in the forming of this nation. And I think he sets a very good example in how we should utilize that in promulgating this Juneteenth celebration across all 8 wards in the city. He sets a beautiful example for that. So we can use that as a model and going forward, as well as some of the historical HBCUs in the area, Howard University, Bowie. We can use some of the rich resources, the African American Museum. All of this stuff is right here. We have a rich history here. We just have to have that commitment to use it and to use it for our overall healing for this city. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banner. Now we will turn to Mr. Thomas Brantham, who has served as the convener of the DMV Juneteenth Home Team. Mr. Blanton.
Thank you very much, my neighbor, friend, colleague, Chairman Anita Bonds. It's really good to be here at this point.
Nice to have you.
And of course, Chuck, really appreciate you introducing this bill and getting us here. We've learned a lot just in the process since we've been organizing, knowing that the bill was coming forward in early January. And just can't thank Chuck and Mr. Dr. Frank Smith enough. In my 4 years of retirement, I had to learn to learn. And I did that at the African American Civil War Museum. You know, as a graduate of Black Studies, one of the first, actually I was number 2 in 1972 at the University of Houston, Black Studies program. You know, I came to the museum and learned more in 6 months than I learned, at the University of Houston. I was talking to a colleague recently. We said not only did they throw away our books, gave us their books, burned our books, tested us on their books, and then made us pay for them. And we still didn't need to learn what we needed to know. And it's museums like the African American Civil War Museum that are teaching people around the country the significance of Juneteenth and other events in African American history. So I would try to exercise the discipline that my mama taught me, but I have a lot more to say. I would try to stick to the point. Councilmember Allen and Bonds, I really appreciate your staff. They have assisted us in coming forth, and I want to commend both Chris and Rum and his compadres in getting us here. I've been where they are. I had 7 years at the council and 14 years in the district government, so I know the kinds of pressures and activities that they have to go through. I work with both of you, on community struggles, on many different issues. So I don't come here just as academician, a person sitting on the sidelines, and I can never apologize to Chairman Mendelson enough, for not following through with all of his demands and expectations, but we continue to try. Thank you to the people of the District of Columbia for listening and those who will listen to the state. This is a very important document that we're laying here today. There weren't hearings before on the federal bill, and to my knowledge, there weren't hearings on the Budget Act. You know, those two acts are very important, but the underlying discussion is also important, the things that we learn. We appreciate the interest and support of those who are listening today. And people are listening all over the country, or will listen all over the country, because we're tied up and affiliated with the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. And it's in that capacity as liaison between the African American Civil War Museum and the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation that I gained experience and knowledge about the district's contribution to this commemoration of Juneteenth. I have to also thank my family and friends and comrades and colleagues, again, across the country who made this day possible. People have been working to get Juneteenth on the map for years. You all may have heard of Miss Oprah Lee, you know, who celebrates Juneteenth from June 6th all the way to July 4th. You know, there's a reason for that. And again, with some discipline, I will try to explain to you that from my great-grandmother's house in Douglas, Texas, to Galveston is 450 miles. You want to try to walk that? Soldiers were in Texas 2 years before they got, before Juneteenth happened. And there's no way that we didn't know that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and that the war was going on and people were fighting for freedom. I am a Texan, a very proud Texan, but I've lived in Washington, D.C. for 40 years. I pay taxes here. My children have been educated here. My wife teaches at GW. We are Washingtonians. Thank you for introducing and co-sponsoring this bill and providing this opportunity to stand with others who have been a part of the DC DMV Juneteenth home team. If you're on the line and a member of the home team, please signify in some capacity. And I hope the committee has some way of verifying that people across the city are supporting this effort. I am also supported by labor organizations. The Metropolitan Washington Council endorsed our efforts to work on Juneteenth and for this bill to go forward. Community organizations, businesses, and people from across the nation, again, are supportive of the legislation and are watching to see what Washington does. And another speaker has already spoke to that. I think Dr. Smith talked about people learn from Washington. People come to ring the bells of freedom that some say were heard June 19, 1865. You will learn from the next speaker, Carl Adams, there's much more to that historical date than June 19, you know, and I won't go into that any further. Regarding Bill 24-0620, the Juneteenth History and Planning Commission Establishment Act of 2022, I want us to be clear. No one owns or should own Juneteenth. It is a day and a period of time that we commemorate. We should teach, we should learn the struggles of freedom, the study of history, and how we move forward in our own personal journeys towards humanity and for a peaceful society. As long as we are Black, African-American, and for all Americans across racial groups and nations, there will be lessons to learn from the United States Colored Troops of the Union Army in that march in the Texas campaign. And again, that's that sweep all the way from North Texas down into Galveston, and not just the entry into Galveston. And especially those who participated in the bivouac on June 19, 1865. And hopefully the national person will talk about why we call it a bivouac. The commission will be trustees for the people of the District of Columbia. They will help us learn. They will help us know each other. Help us appreciate that we learn the freedom struggle is ongoing and a personal responsibility. The district will benefit from Juneteenth activities. Tourist representatives reported to the council what the impact has been on our economy. I won't take the time to go into those details, but I invite you to envision the 4th of July, the Cherry Blossom Festival, St. Patrick's Day, and for me, a Nats baseball game. Put Juneteenth on the level of those events and their impact on Washington, D.C. I do. That is what it means to me. This vision that I share with you, those events and activities have transformed neighborhoods and given residents livelihoods. Living out the vision can also do that living out the vision for Juneteenth can also do that for our city. Our knowledge will expand. It is not over. We will educate others around the world that our struggle has value, not only in this country, but to the world. It is, yes, it is economic, but it's also personal. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And again, we say service is the rent we pay to live on earth. I am pleased to say you gave me this opportunity to pay rent before it was due. Juneteenth commemorates our ancestors who were freed from American bondage on and before Juneteenth, 1985. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for that testimony. Now we'll hear from Mr. Carl Adams, who is the historian for the Observance Foundation. Mr. Adams.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I see some familiar faces and hear some familiar voices. Thanks to the commission for inviting me. I am an author. I wrote the true story of Nance, Trials of the First Slave Freed by Abraham Lincoln, and her son fought in the Civil War with the Illinois 29th Regiment, and he was present at the original Juneteenth. However, his first military assignment for his regiment, as well as most of the over 100 U.S. colored troop regiments, were assigned first to the defenses of Washington. When the Civil War broke out in April of 1861, President Lincoln's biggest concern was the defense of Washington. Now, since I served in both the Marine Corps and the Army as an officer, officers always have their military map somewhere. This is an 1865 military map of the defenses of Washington. This reddened area here, this is DC itself. And there is an arc of highlighted forts that were protecting the entire area of Washington, DC, 365 degrees. There are only over 60 forts, 93 gun batteries, and over 30 miles of roads. And all of that had to be prepared the first year of the Civil War. Now, who was the ones who prepared those gun positions, who built the forts, and then later manned the forts? They were originally self-emancipated enslaved people from Maryland and Virginia. They flocked to DC once they heard and saw about the emancipation promise that was coming into DC. Frederick Douglass said, once a Republican becomes president, slave owners know that their days are numbered, and they were. And it created, DC turned into a magnet that drew hundreds of thousands of African Americans to DC. And so since President Lincoln did not feel like he could put them in the field as soldiers yet, he did put them to work in DC, building 60 forts, building 30 miles of roads, and over 93 cannon batteries just to protect Washington, D.C., because it was completely surrounded by rebel states. Now, most of those U.S. colored troop servants had all been sent first to the defenses of Washington, including Nance's son, Private William Henry Costley. Camp Casey was down here near Alexandria, and there was at one time or another over 100,000 soldiers assigned to Camp Casey as part of the defenses of Washington, because they helped to build it and they helped to defend it. And then from there, they moved on to the Richmond-Petersburg front. And then after that, they all boarded some 20 ships provided by General Meigs, and they took the long sail route around the tip of Florida. And then they all managed, the 3rd Brigade of the 2nd Division managed to make it to Galveston Bay by the 18th of June. But because of the fact there were already ships in there, they required tugboats and pilot boats to get them to land. So they landed in Galveston on the morning of the 19th of June, 1865. And the regiments from the 28th Indiana, which was one of the first to man the defenses of Washington, the 28th Indiana, the 29th Illinois, and the 31st New York. And those soldiers had been recruited from throughout the North They were recruited from anywhere they could find them. They recruited from Kentucky, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and every state of the North. And they all participated in the defenses of Washington. And then they went on to block the French intervention in Mexico. And I found a letter dated June 19th that General Grant was prepared to go to war with the French in Mexico if the president approved it. But the Secretary of State Seward, since he had suffered his own assassination attempt the night Lincoln was shot, he said, no, don't invade. And so General Grant and General Sheridan came up with a plan to take all the surplus weapons from the Civil War and plant them on the Rio Grande, 30,000 weapons provided to the Republic of Mexico, much as we are today providing weapons to Ukraine. Thank you. The defense of Washington was mostly African-American troops who were sent there as their first assignment following enlistment into the U.S. Army. So thank you. And that is the reason why DC, of all cities, should especially be honoring United States colored troops and Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our entire public panelists. Thank you so much for this history. I was trying to record all the dates and the number of the forts and the miles and what have you. And so I'm sure that having this commission in place will render to us a lot of great information that I'm sure many in the community are not really aware of. So thank you all so very much. I just have a few questions. I have to ask Peter Bug if you could kind of mute your sound because we're getting feedback. Okay, thank you so much. I've heard what your interest is in the holiday itself and its importance, but can you elaborate a little bit about what your thoughts are regarding the establishment of the commission? And my question is, what should be its goals? What should be its membership? Because I've heard of membership a little different from what is currently written in the law. And I just want to make sure that we capture everything that you would like to share with us. Oh, I see that Chuck Hicks has joined us. So if you could hold that question, and we'll receive testimony from Mr. Chuck Hicks. Mr. Hicks?
Hello?
Yes, we have you. Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you so much. It's been, technology sometimes has its own way of doing things. But let me begin by saying that, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you and other council members in the District of Columbia and their staff, and especially Council Member Charles Allen and his staff member Chris Loriski, who helped so diligently in working to put this bill together with Dr. Frank Smith and myself. I am pleased that the entire council has chosen to co-sponsor this legislation, serving as an opportunity to say and show the citizens of the District of Columbia that Juneteenth matters for all of DC, not just Black history or Black DC, but DC in its entirety. While I am pleased with the legislation as a whole, I would like to suggest a modification. I'd like to suggest that the commission be composed of 24 commissioners, allowing for each council member at large to appoint two council commissioners, since they represent the focus of just the entire community and not one ward. And I think that becomes important in terms of their focus, and the city, they represent more than just their wards, but the entire city, citizens. I also think that, if for continuity's sake, those persons who would serve 1 year would be given 2 years, and those who serve 2 years would be served for 3 years. I think that if you're on for just one term, that you, by the time we begin to understand the move, then they're gone, and we got a new set of people coming on. And I think the continuity lasts longer with 2 years and 3 year terms. I also like to think that I hope this commission will be a commission of diversity, that it is a complete diverse commission, that it is not just an African-American/Black commission, but it is a commission because in the Civil War, more than African-Americans fought for African-Americans' freedom. And I think the diversity of the city should also be identified on the commission. I'm also wondering whether or not, as we add representatives and departments to like Black Historical College, whether or not we should look at adding maybe somebody from the Black media class, the radio and newsprint as part of that commission. I'm also wondering where it would be best, where the commission should be under. And I think perhaps that it might be better if we consider putting it under the Commission on the Arts and Humanities. One of the things that I think I would like to see that the commission is doing is that they will offer at some point, I'd like to think, many small community grants to each ward, totaling a limited amount of money, and that the commission would be, the Commission on Arts and Humanities would be a guidance in terms of the guidelines and the kinds of structures that we need to do when we're giving out small community grants and those kinds of things. I am exceedingly happy with the legislation that has been laid out. I am happy to see that the commission has provided for a director. I am happy to see that the council has talked about adequate funding and the kinds of things that it wants to see this commission do in terms of web pages and education, and the commission, the legislation really sort of talks about more than just a one-day event, which is so important. That it talks about learning and educating what Juneteenth means and how it impacts the city today, particularly when there is such a racial divide in so many parts of the country. So I am more than excited to be supporting this commission, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have of me.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. So again, to the entire panel, my question is pretty much along the lines that I think Mr. Hicks has begun to answer. And I'll ask each of you that have not spoken to the mission, the organization, and the membership of this commission, if you would do so now, if you care to. I have what Mr. Hicks has shared, and so are there any additions or any changes or modifications to this and to what the original legislation articulate?
Well, Madam Chair, this is Frank Smith. Let me take a shot at a little bit. And you know, Chuck and I talk about this a lot, and Tom Blanton, who's a volunteer at the museum, see him every Monday. He stays every Monday with us here. So I want to say that from the air, Tom, I really appreciate you and your service here. I think that the way I look at this is that Juneteenth, we see on June 19th as a culminating event, because that's really what it was. Remember, I tried to describe your process, but the war is now over with. Lincoln's been assassinated. There's been a big march in Washington, and they take these, we'll call these crack troops. These are guys, they may have been involved in the beginning in the kind of military operations that you talk about, Dr. Adams, but the 29th, USCT had actually been, they were involved in the Battle of Richmond, the siege of Richmond. They chased Robert E. Lee all the way to Appomattox. They were the ones that cut him off when he tried to come out of Appomattox. These were seasoned troops that they now were putting on ships and sending down to Texas because they had some guys down there that were out of control. So Juneteenth is the culminating event. And so what I think of, the way I think of it, Madam Chair, is that there will be a series of activities that take place during the year. And so we will try to create something called a Juneteenth community choir that would perform on, they would have to practice through the year. I envision us having an oratorical contest where we have young people talk about, write, and then recite stories about what Juneteenth means to them, how they see themselves as part of this legacy now. And then maybe all of those people would perform in various locations leading up to June 19th. They would perform in their churches, they would perform in their schools, they would perform on some stage that we will set up on this culminating day. So I see this as a day of jubilee for the African-American community. And as these young people talk about what it means to them, how they themselves now are going to live out the legacy of these people, both of these groups that are involved, these people who are living here in Galveston who get this news rather late, and also these liberators, these soldiers. You say, Adam, that you know one of the descendants, we have one of the descendants of the 29th who's going to be here on June 19th, June 20th of this year. We're going to celebrate Juneteenth at the African American Civil War Memorial on June 20th next month with a program there. And then we're going to have one of the descendants of the 29th come and talk about her great-grandfather who actually built a monument in Chicago near the place where he actually enlisted in the Army. So it's a very interesting story. It's a chance for us to do something that I think can be meaningful for the city, be meaningful for our young people, and they can carry out this legacy the way it should be talked about.
All right, thank you. Mr. Blanton.
I think Chuck addressed the spirit of the concerns that were at the top, so I really want to endorse and sign on to the things he talked about. And of course, friend again, Councilmember Frank Smith was right on point. Just to speak up and just share some of the lessons from working with my team. We see Juneteenth as an ongoing educational process. So we don't want the commissioners to get in kind of a judicial budget box. There needs to be an ongoing dialogue with the people that they work with. So when Chuck talks about the grants and the conversation, that's really important to allowing people to get involved. I say we have like 10 to 12 organizations and entities that are involved in the home team. Everybody has their own theme. There's a special connection to arts and culture. There's a special connection to business. There's a special connection to communities and the schools. So we have to allow for that. And I think that the commission operations need to really grasp that. The national organization has a slogan, all things Juneteenth. They are constantly reminding us that the life, the breadth of the struggle for freedom, is very broad. And teaching people that, I mentioned in my testimony, personal responsibility. It's not over. What is going on in this country is an expression of freedom. And people acting responsibly to that. So the commission embodying that, teaching people that, working, Brother Boehner and Peterborough, exemplifying that, that it goes to the root of our daily lives. I could go on. People think I'm quiet, but I can talk for a minute. And then the commissioners themselves, in just these 6 months of working on the Juneteenth project, I realized the value of our ANC commissioners. The district came from being ruled by commissioners. And some people in the district still kind of had a lethargic, let them handle the attitude. That's not what's going to make Juneteenth. What's going to make Juneteenth is people grasping how it impacts them, how they can share that with their families and their children. And I try to stop at that.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Dr.
Madam
Adams?
Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to also talk for a second about the composition of this commission. And what I think is virtually very, very important is that while we have commissioners, that the commission is open and that we recruit, that people can come in and they can present testimony, they can present ideas to the commission, that we're not a closed commission, that we are willing to have, we can have within that commission, we can have anybody who's interested in serving in a volunteer capacity on whatever kinds of projects we're doing. And the fact that we also reach out uh, to have people on that commission that are young people, that we provide an opportunity, and maybe, just maybe, that there ought to be some special appointments or seats set aside for young people. I hadn't thought about that when I was putting together my compilation of the number of people who should be on the commission. But if they are not as the commissioners, maybe they can serve as youth advisors to the commission, because we don't want to not have some input from young people. And so I think it becomes important in terms of looking at the composition that we find a way to include young people. I'm sure that we'll have seniors on there and a whole bunch of other people, but I think it's important that we at least have some youth advisors as appointed by the commission to serve on the commission. I neglected to think about or to include that in my testimony, but I think it becomes very, very important when we talk about the composition of the community. I am extremely also pleased with the idea that how we put the wards in terms of the number of years that the council members will be responsible for, because I thought that was an important piece of discussion as to why we chose wards 1, 2, 3, and 4 as opposed to 5, 6, 7, and 8, and the composition and one of African Americans and where they're most concentrated at was the reasons for those kinds of designations, which I thought was extremely insightful of the councilman and his staff and the council members who reviewed the legislation. So those are my other thoughts about the composition of the commission. My question to you is, what do you see the process in terms of how we move this commission forward into an actuality?
Mr. Hicks, let me just see if there's anyone else who wants to respond to give their ideas on what this commission should look like, what it's going to be charged to do. Dr. Adams, Mr. Banner.
Yes. I just wanted to speak to what the ultimate objective should look like with this commission. I understand fully the historical significance of the involvement of African American soldiers. But I also want to spotlight on what did Juneteenth set in motion. What did it set in motion? It set in motion this trek for African Americans coming out of this bondage, coming out of this enslavement, for a full citizenship known to other Americans, but not known to us. And so what did that entail? What institutions were born out of that? What types of lifestyles did we incorporate as a result of that? What kind of music did we listen to? What kind of music did we create in response to these conditions? So I would like to see us celebrate this in a holistic fashion and not just lock it into this one day. It should show a timeline of a continuation of that march towards that freedom that we all hold so dear.
All right, well, thank you very much. And anyone else, Dr. Adams or Peterbug? All right.
Okay, what I would like to, okay.
How do you see
do
this
I
commission,
do I have
Peterbug?
to go? Well, I think you know what Brother said, and is that we involved, generations of folks that's going to be, an ongoing process. We involve young people, we involve the whole city, and it's like Juneteenth Day should be like the 4th of July. A long time ago, folks like you had to ask people when was Halloween. You knew when it was. You didn't have to wait for the 29th you knew the 31st was Halloween. So that means that, you know, we can make sure that we can get into young people and to do that, you know, that don't know and won't and don't want to know, and
Peter Buck, I have to ask you, is there
remind them
some way that
there
we
was
can
a
hear?
day in this great country, and you know, we do not. I can't hardly hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, but if your comments are coming and going, they're not clear. The reception isn't clear.
Okay. Well,
Now we can hear you.
know,
Go right ahead.
I want to say, can you hear me now? Hear me better now?
A little
No.
better, yes, sir.
Okay.
We're getting an echo now. All right.
Can you hear me? Okay. Is that better?
No, sir, it's not.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right.
More of the Peter Bugs Day, June 18th at 12 o'clock a year. We perform over here for the last 5 years, you know, so because you all hear me. But June 18th is Peter Bugs Day, 45 years, you'll see a form of Juneteenth celebration. Maybe it might influence you, or maybe might add some of the things you need to have, you know, add it to your about the good. Is part of the ancestors we pray to.
All right. Peter Buck, we're going to call you and have you to testify through staff computer so that we can get your testimony.
The flag, and then we say, national group, that was everybody on the side, but we're going to then come and I can't hear you.
We can see you now, but I'm not sure we'll hear you any better.
I can't. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, man.
I can't. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. I'll move.
Okay.
We'll try to get a good connection with Peterbug. Ms. Simpson, would you try calling him and seeing if we can get him to come through your system? Maybe that would be more reliable.
Yeah, he's not answering his call. I'm asking him to call me instead now.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
Dr. Adams, did you want to add anything to the composition and the goals of this commission?
I think the easiest thrust to proceed from here, since Juneteenth ends June 19th, actually it doesn't end because people will continue to celebrate it, but that's when most of the schools are closed down and most school curriculums are set. But one of the things that changes from summer to summer to summer are library summer programs. The most expeditious way to get education about Juneteenth, African-American history, and everything else that relates to that is go through your public libraries and introduce the Juneteenth 101 curriculum and teacher's guide to public libraries. I am sure you'll be able to find plenty of African-American teachers who would be willing to teach African-American history at library summer programs. They're going to be open. We encourage children to read all summer long anyway. And so therefore, it is possibly the easiest, rather than button heads with the educational system, to put it in the public libraries for summer reading programs. That's my best recommendation to proceed forward with the education is through library summer reading programs in the public libraries.
She's gone mute.
Now, Chairman
Yeah, she's
Barnes, you're
muted.
muted now.
Little trying today. Okay. My second question is, how do you see the relationship between the commission and the office of the secretary, which is as the bill is written? As you know, we have the Emancipation Commission and the MLK Junior Holiday Commission. So how do you see these intersecting, or do you see them intersecting?
Oh, I think they can, but at the same time, I'm not in government. I'm not a government employee. I really do not know how the DC city or district government works. So I will leave that up to the people who know about the political institutions of Washington, DC. I'm a migrant from Illinois. So I just moved to Bethesda 5 years ago. So I don't even live in DC. But so I'll leave the government up to the government.
All right, well, thank you. Dr. Smith, you want to?
Yeah, I've thought about that. Chuck and I have talked about this a lot. And one, I saw the testimony from the from the secretary, assuming that this would be in the office of the secretary, which sounds sort of logical considering everything else is there. But one of the things that we discussed was the possibility this might go to the Commission for the Arts. So we have a little bit different type of administration than what you have with the Office of the Secretary. And the Commission for Arts has a little more autonomy, a little bit more independent. But on the other hand, if you talk about these several different commissions together, you talk about, sorry, I got some people working here at the museum. If you talk about Martin Luther King Day, DC Emancipation Day, and Juneteenth together as a sort of a continuum, they ought to be in the same place. So I'm a little conflicted about it, but I'll leave it up to you. It's up to your judgment.
All right, thank you. Anyone else care to comment on that? This is where you feel the commission belongs. So currently it's in the office of the secretary. You know, administratively, that's where it would be. And there, I know that Mr. Hicks had indicated the interest in it being a part of the Commission on the Arts. You've heard from Mr. Smith, you know, he's a little conflicted. Anyone else care to comment on that?
I defer to Chuck and Frank because they're working at that level.
All right.
Little known history of mine, I was the first executive director for the Consumer Claims Arbitration Board. And we were at DCRA. I'm not suggesting at all that Juneteenth be a DCRA, but in terms of administrating things like this commission, I haven't heard any criticisms of the Office of the Secretary. And as a community organizer, my civic associations, we get certificates and commendations from the officer fairly efficiently. So as long as they're doing the supportive work and not interfering with the independence of the commission, I defer to Frank and Chuck, people who work with them regularly. And
All
you.
right.
Chair.
Thank you.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you very much. Yes.
Madam Chair, I by no means mean to imply that the office of the secretary could not do the job. One of the things that I think for those of us who kind of understand the responsibility of the secretary, that she has an enormous amount of commissions under her. And so it takes a lot of time and effort to coordinate these things. And to have a commission that's going to really kind of function on a regular basis as opposed to the Martin Luther King Holiday Commission, which comes together and functions for Martin Luther King's birthday. I think that when we look at continuity when we look at trying to work together and I think that the Commission on Arts and Humanities has a good track record for the kinds of things that we'd like to work with and do, and with their guidance that we could move more quickly along. I think that it requires a lot for commissions that are under the Secretary. With the Secretary is very limited in terms of staff. Really, it's just it's the Secretary and one assistant, whereas with the Commission, there's a whole staff there that can help facilitate and move things and sort of work with us. I certainly think that what the Secretary's office has done and is doing is valuable, but I think the Commission could move a lot more effectively and efficiently if we were under the auspices of the Commission on Arts and Humanities.
All right.
One quick question. Do we still have the Office of Boards and Commission?
Yes, we do.
It doesn't serve that kind of support function?
Well, the boards and commissions are primarily done through the talent office, which does primarily the recruitment of individuals to serve on various boards, commissions, and even serve in executive administration. So the Secretary's office is the office that has been defined in the law to administer this commission. The Arts Commission's goals have been different. Not to say that there isn't some exchange between, or could be exchange between the services that they provide being also provided to the Juneteenth Commission and it not be there. I'm not sure. We'll investigate and see what the possibility is, but today we want to just get your ideas, since you are our public witnesses, as to what you think about it. But the bill is currently written that it would be under the Secretary's office. And so therefore it falls within, my committee. That's why I'm, convening this hearing.
Madam Chair, was there not initially the Emancipation Committee was under the council for a very long time?
Well, when you say under the council, are you defining it as being under the committee of the whole?
I think it was. I think Councilmember Orange ran that Emancipation Committee for a very long time, as it was somewhat independent.
Okay, and well, it was assigned by the chairman of the council to this committee, my committee, Housing and
Right.
Executive Administration, and so we'll try to move forward and we'll investigate what the possibilities are. But I wanted to get your testimony, and you have indicated that is your desire. And so it will be reflected in the report. When we hold a hearing, we do a report on the hearing that is then will go forward to the entire council. So, but thank you very much for that. Let me ask you, as you think about this commission and the work being very vast, is, some of the ideas that have been expressed and the hopes of how this commission will move forward indicate that there's ongoing activities, there's a celebration, maybe a day of celebration, ongoing activities through the year. And I just wondered, how do you see the commission meeting those goals? What would be the administrative responsibility of the commission? in order to, let's say, do a day celebration. And then secondly, to do ongoing activities. Did you have in mind some way to roll into the commission activities that would maybe celebrate other significance within our community? And I think one of the witnesses indicated, well, when we do, for instance, when we are fighting redlining, and if there's a significant announcement about a programmatic thrust, how does that fold into the work of the commission? Have you given thought to that? I'll ask Dr. Smith.
I believe that's why it needs to be a holistic approach here, and not just seen as something as arts and humanities, because the damage that was done is a holistic thing. It's not just one thing. It's not just arts and humanities that the damage was done, although arts and humanities can be the vehicle to celebrate the culture. But what about the rest of the damage? What about the damage to our ability to have businesses? What about the damage to our health? What about the post-traumatic enslavement syndrome? See, it must be a holistic approach. That's why I would beg to differ with having this just under arts and humanities. I think each agency needs to have a goal that they will set to meet some of the remedies that we put forth in this commission. For instance,
well, let me ask you, Mr. Banner, are we also now thinking that if we're going to show an extreme breadth, comprehensive breadth of this commission, sounds like we're moving very closely to this being one of the major activities of the city administrator, because that's all of the government, all of the services, all of the celebrations, very much like the that has been the point, for instance, in our efforts to fight COVID through and the breadth of the city administrator's office, and for building blocks. So it's like various, very comprehensive, broad stroke activities that incorporate all of the government services, all of the communities. I'm just wondering if that may also be a choice for this, for the anchor for this commission.
I believe that's the scope of the damage that has been done. So how can you just heal it in one small sector? If we are going to capture the damage that has been done and seek to remedy, seek to offer solutions through this celebration, because the celebration is just not about our culture, it's about healing us. This must become a vehicle for us to be healed as well as celebrating our culture. So if the breadth of the damage has been just that wide, then in my mind, it's illogical to just narrow it down to just arts and humanities.
All right, well, thank you. Dr. Smith, you look like you're ready to give some thought to this.
Well, let me say that my thought about this, first of all, I'm sorry, I can't stop this that's going on in the background right now. But my thought is that this is a commission, it's a volunteer commission of people who are going to come together to plan and coordinate some events and to really sort of lend support to people who are already doing things like this point that Tom Blanton makes, where we provide a forum for them and provide an avenue and some kind of support for them, what they're doing, and then use this June 19th as so it's a day, it's a 1 day paid federal holiday now. So we can sort of build up to that as a day, as sort of a culminating experience, which comes in the spirit of Juneteenth, this celebration that takes place in Galveston. So I think we can do that, but I don't think we ought to overpromise ourselves to think that we're going to use this to change all of the various institutions of government and education and whatever. It's mostly, I think we should stay with sort of the spirit of Juneteenth as it has evolved. This is a day of celebration. People took their kids to the park and had picnics and talked to them about Black history, and they took them to plays and they took them to various other things. It was very informal. And so I think we ought to keep some of that informality about it also. But I think also we ought to use it as a way to try to coordinate, to highlight what this has meant to the African American and to the nation. This is America finally admitting this is the last day of slavery in the United States. And what do we get out of this? We get the 13th Amendment that abolishes slavery, the 14th Amendment that makes African American citizens, the 15th Amendment, the right to vote. These are precious items that we're fighting over still today as part of this legacy. So I think that this is a chance for us to talk about those things, talk about how we are part of that legacy, and especially to focus on young people who are trying to get to, I could see us say, I talked about a choir already. I've talked about picnics already. I'd like to see us do something called the Juneteenth Scholarship Commission that will give scholarships, talk about reparations as a way to try to convince some of these young people to stay in school and themselves become leaders in our communities and neighborhoods and stuff, to try to go back and help to take care of some of the problems that we have out here today. So we have an opportunity to do a lot of things here, but I don't think we ought to overpromise. And I think we'll have a lot of help. There'll be a lot of people out there who'll be willing to come to meetings, talk about what they're doing, and we'll try to find a way to enrich them and what their efforts and make it possible for them to have a place as part of this commission.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Chair? Madam Chair?
yes, Mr. Hicks.
Yeah, a couple of points that I'd like to, and I concur with Brother Frank. But one of the things I think is important in the legislation is that the legislation has designated agencies that will sit at that board, sit on the commission. If it's like the director of the public library, if he's out there, he has a representative there. And part of that is to coordinate with the commission the kinds of resources that we feel are necessary to make this Juneteenth successful in terms of not only for Juneteenth Day, but for kind of an ongoing project. I think the other thing that's important to remember is that the Juneteenth Commission can also partner with the African American Affairs Committee. The Juneteenth can partner with the Commission on Health around African American health. I think the Commission can also be a partner, that everything is not done. And that's certainly one of the other pieces that we don't want to forget, is that we don't want to leave out the communities in terms of the kind of things that they like to do celebrating Juneteenth. And so I see this commission as Brother Frank says, as a partnership. We can't accomplish everything. And I think that the commission, once it's established, will sit down and try to meet some of the goals and objectives that are set in the legislation that are encouraging but well-defined within our limitations, and with the assistance of the kinds of resources that the legislation brings to the commission. You know, it brings the Department of Recreation as a partner there, and like I said, it brings the library. It brings historical Black colleges there. And so I think that Brother Fritz has a major point in terms of how we look at it. And I think the role that the Commission on Arts and Humanities does is that it helps to facilitate and coordinate the many activities, even if we're doing lectures. Of course, oftentimes we do lectures and tell stories, and connected to the Commission on Arts and Humanities, it's a Commission on Humanities that does historical stories and telling our stories in communities and educating our communities about the role of Black churches and what they went through here in the city, the first Black church, and tell their story. So I think there's some resources and the coordination that the Commission on Arts and Humanities and the Humanities can help us do in terms of looking at the issues that we think things we can accomplish, and the things that we can partnership with other people in the community. For an example, how can we partner with the Georgia Avenue Juneteenth Commission? What is it that they're doing that we can support and they need? And I think we need to keep in mind how we celebrate Juneteenth on a continuous basis. and that it is not position of the commission that is like, changing the whole, trying to change the whole district in terms of what they ought to know, what they ought to learn, but it's to give people an opportunity to participate in some opportunities that the Juneteenth Commission can put together, as well as support other community Juneteenth associations in terms of what they see themselves doing and how they celebrate this very special day. And as you say, that it not be limited to a day. In many states, Juneteenth commissions and groups they run for a week. And I would suspect that sooner or later, just like Black History was once upon a time a week, it is now a month. And I think that eventually Juneteenth will have that significance too, and it will continue to expand itself. In many states and places, Juneteenth is not a one-day celebration. It is an extended, it goes for a week. And so I think we have to keep the possibility that we're just beginning, but there are opportunities and possibilities that we can grow into.
Thank you very much. And all of your comments that we've received today will be included in the report on this commission. I note that the head of the African American War Museum is designated as the chairperson. So I have asked, I will ask Dr. Smith, if he wants to put on the record at this time his thoughts about the size of the commission. As an example, it has been suggested that the current size is adequate, and it's also been suggested that the current size may need to expand.
Well, I did hear Chuck offer some proposed amendments to expand it by, I think, several people. I don't have a problem with that. I think the more people we have on that, the better, more bodies. The Chinese say many hands make the light work. So if we see this as a group of people who are really, many people willing to work, I think the more people, the better. So I don't have a problem with it. It's a voluntary commission, and it's very hard to get these people to come to meetings and do real work. And so the bigger the pool, the more likely we are to get a good core of hard workers. So I have a problem with that.
All right. And my final question to our public witnesses, has thought been given to the work of the commission from the perspective of how grueling this task might be? Are we thinking monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, task groups, all of that? And I'm sure that you have, as you think about how this legislation will be implemented. But just, food for thought, just give that, some of your consideration. I see Mr. Adams is exercised to tell us what he thinks. Go right ahead, Dr. Adams.
I just got a text from the president of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. Unfortunately, he didn't get the link. I just sent it to him via email, so he may be joining very soon. Unfortunately late, but I do think he should be. I think he should be heard, and I think he's will make an excellent contribution to your commission. I just hope he can join us in here in the next few minutes, because he's late. He didn't get the link. Sorry about that, but like I said, I just forwarded it to him. I hope he can get logged in on it real soon here.
Well, I appreciate that, and I want everyone to know who may be watching, the public, that you can send in written testimony, and it will be included in the register and our report. You email your written testimony to housing@dccouncil, one word, .us. And in fact, we will receive your written testimony through Thursday, the 26th of May. Okay. So in the event that he does not get on, Dr. Adams, he can certainly submit testimony for the record.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
Madam
Mr.
Chair?
Blanton, Mr.
Yes.
Hicks, Mr. Blanton, I see his hand
Yes.
first, please.
Just kind of responding to your last question and picking up on in full agreement with the scope that Dr. Smith laid out. That's kind of how we've been functioning in the home team. We patterned it after Chuck's host committee that was set up when the National Museum opened. And this Juneteenth discussion, amplifies the need for that kind of activity. People want to be engaged all across the city. And they need to know, do I go down 9th Street? Do I go down U Street? Do I do it on Sunday morning? Do I do it on Sunday afternoon? Who else has drums? They need that kind of information because they might just be missing that, even though they might have a full talent, a knowledge of their particular subject to do what they want to do. They need a few friends. And they don't want to set up a whole organization, 501c3, office and all of that just to get through Juneteenth, what in their view, starting out is just, June 19th. So one, your direct response to your question, we started in January and people were glad that we started in January because people are coming on board now as we get close to Juneteenth saying, I do want to do a forum. Can you come out to my housing project? Can you come out to my school? And they need a number and a place to call and to plug into. So that's one level of commitment. Somebody needs to be there, during the season. In response to Brandon and Peterborough, and I definitely signed on to that in terms of the broad scope. Somebody in the core of the process, somebody's in the core of the process need to understand the depth of oppression and the lack of exercise of freedom. Let me just do this right quick. Maybe you get a sense. Our direct participants start on the 2nd with just kind of lectures and forums and housing projects and things like that. On the 16th, a group is coming from South Carolina. They were going to come anyway and talk about reparation. They didn't know where to go, what time to go, that kind of thing. And we helped them get, hooked up with Sankofa Bookstore. On the 17th, the National Foundation was doing flag raising. They wanted to be on U Street, but they wanted to do the flag raising in traditional places they've done, Lincoln Park or Howard or something like that. Working through that process, and Steve would probably talk about that if he gets online. Everybody knows DC is not the friendliest place to do something. When you go through boards and commissions and police departments and 16 different police agencies and stuff, you got to know who to call, when to call. So having, again, somebody, available to that. The 18th, the Poor People's Campaign, that's a national mobilization that people have been working on for 3 years, So they want to hook up. They want to know who's active in town. And again, are they tripping over people? Are they complimenting people? They need that information. The 19th, the cultural day itself, again, scheduling, is very important. And somebody mentioned Georgia Avenue. Georgia Avenue businesses have been doing this for like 3 years, but they still need money. They still need technical support, and they are glad, that you're having this forum today, so that people can be educated about how important it is, so they can go back to their business owners and their base and say, we're in this, we're a part of this. The 20th, the National Foundation, again, Steve is on hold, but they contacted, when they first decided to do the bivouac, they contacted Frank and the museum. Who do we go to? How do we get it done? And that's how, I got involved in the process again. Frank said, well, Thomas, you help them with that. And the 21st, Brandon, we recognized, I'm going to get in trouble. There's no sense in loading the gun unless you're going to shoot it. If we're going to excite our people about freedom, they got to vote.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our public witnesses. And we will now turn to hear from our government witness, Secretary Kimberly Bassett from the Office of the Secretary.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Hicks.
Will I follow her? About the composition and stuff you were talking?
Oh, all right. I'm very sorry. I did not. Okay. Yes, please. No, would you please give us I think you started by telling us the composition, But if you have any additional
Yeah.
ideas, I'll take that down right now.
Madam Chair, I think that this commission ought to meet regularly. I think that the commission can decide, and I would expect that the commission will want to meet at least monthly. I would think that the commission will want to sort of decide what it can do, and then find commissioners who want to chair that. I would think that the commission would then be willing to accept a co-chair from any of the volunteers who'd like to be a part of that. I would like to think that as far as projects were concerned, that the projects and the work to be done would be coordinated through the chair of each project with people who would volunteer to do that, and with the kinds of resources that are available from the designated positions that the council has recommended. I think that as a project, and every project is not deemed for Juneteenth, and so there are other projects. Like for an example, I certainly think that one of the projects that the commission ought to look at is somehow putting together a calendar of events, and that maybe that has to be coordinated with the director and the Commission on Arts and Humanities, similar to the one we do for Black History Month, where we list not all, but over 100 events every month during Black History Month. And I would think that the commission would want to solicit those kinds of things as a project and work with the director that will be named to do those kinds of things. I think that that's the scope, but I think it will be, once the commission is formed, I think it will be left to the commission to kind of figure out their scope of work and when they would want to meet. But I'm sure the commission will want to meet at least on what we call regularly, while there will be subcommittee meetings in between that time. It's what I kind of think, I hope we would envision, the committee would envision in terms of how it will function.
All right. Now, you mentioned something that I have to follow up on. Are you suggesting that eventually we would have a Juneteenth month declared in the city?
Well, I think we will see where the possibility goes, and if it can grow to that. You know that the history of Black History Week was when the country got to be 200 years old. They asked the ASALH, Association of African American History and Study, instead of having a week, to have a month of Black History celebration, and it got so popular that they never could stop it. And I just think that in time, because there are some places they don't have one day, they have a week. Some people have a weekend. I think the popularity of it is growing and continues to grow. In my many years of doing Black History, Juneteenth in the city, in the last 5 years, it has grown. The popularity of it has grown tremendously. Where there were 4 or 5 groups doing it, now there are 15 or 20. And there's so many of them that I get a number of calls from people saying, I understand it's going to be a June commission, and I want to be a part of it, and we want to work with it. And my answer is that, and I know you know about us, and sometimes I don't know about that group, but I say, I'm so happy to know that you're doing what you're doing. So I think that there's a possibility in the future we can look towards that. I certainly think that the commission would look at what it can do now as we begin to build the structure and expand it.
All right. Well, I thank you very, very much for your comments. And again, I thank all of the public witnesses today. We have a wealth of information that we will be able to contain in our report to move this legislation forward. And now I will turn to our government witness, the Secretary of the District of Columbia, Ms. Bassett, for her presentation. And Madam
Hi.
Secretary, we'll start when you're ready.
I'm sorry, council member. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to thank Council Member Allen, Peter Bugg. He's so great. We also have two commissioners who testified today, Chuck Hicks, Commissioner Frank Smith, Mr. Adams from Bethesda, Mr. Boehner, and Mr. Blanton, who I know very well. I would like to first thank all of them for testifying today.
All right, and Madam Secretary, let me swear you in, please, for
Yes.
your, we should definitely do that. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony that you provide to us today is factual and complete?
Yes, I do.
All righty, thank you very much.
So good morning, Chairperson Bonds, Councilmember Allen, members of the committee and staff. My name's Kimberly Bassett. I'm Secretary of the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Bill 24-0620, the Juneteenth History and Planning Commission Establishment Act of 2022. As introduced, this bill would establish the district's Juneteenth History and Planning Commission to plan for an annual Juneteenth celebration in the district and to educate the public about the history of Juneteenth. Juneteenth commemorates the emancipation of enslaved people in the U.S., while some slaves were declared free under the terms of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1862. The holiday was first celebrated in Texas in 1866, when the state's residents finally learned that slavery had been abolished in 1865. Here in the district, we celebrate being the first freed on April 16th, DC Emancipation Day. I'm having some technical. Here in the district, we celebrated the first freed on April 16th, DC Emancipation Day. This was the day that Abraham Lincoln ended slavery here in Washington, DC. We've celebrated this public holiday every year since 2016. Juneteenth provides us with an opportunity to celebrate the last freed. After more than 200 years, the enslaved were finally free of an institution that controlled their lives and destroyed their families. The push for recognition of this day is not new. For decades, individuals like 95-year-old Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth, who walked from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. yearly and actively advocated for the national holiday. So thanks to their activism, we saw the establishment of Juneteenth as a national holiday and a district holiday in 2021. The Office of the Secretary of the District of Columbia is unique positioned to support the Juneteenth History and Planning Commission. OS can support the development of public program, provide material for curriculum development, and can have the expert knowledge in African American history already available on the commission. Though its staff, OS can recommend topics for public programming and speakers for public events, and through the DC archives provide opportunity for research into lasting effects of slavery on the American society. OS staff can also support the commission by assisting in any way possible with the creation of educational flyers, social media posts, printed brochures, and other educational materials to teach the public about the history and the meaning of Juneteenth in the district and around the country. So in addition, I've served as the chair of the Commission on the Martin Luther King Holiday Commission and the District of Columbia Emancipation Commemoration Commission. These commissions have the same functions: to plan, to coordinate, to organize a public holiday, and to educate their public on their importance. So in closing, we're happy to support the worthwhile endeavor to better educate the public and to recognize this pivotal moment in American history. So thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. This concludes my testimony, and I look forward to answering any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary, for your testimony. I do have a few questions, and I'll start with, you just articulated the fact that you serve as the chair of two important commissions, Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday, and then the Emancipation Commemoration Commission. And so now, as we plan, according to the legislation, we would be adding the Juneteenth part to what I hear is already or has been suggested by the public testimony, that that's a lion's share of activities. And so the question is, you're now going to have in your office, according to legislation, this process that would not only do planning, but also would create the commemoration of Juneteenth. And so tell us a little bit about how you see what's the nexus of these three major celebrations, educational projects, culminating in your office, and how will you pull them together or somehow add this additional activity to your breadth of?
So you know firsthand, Councilmember Bonds, what our office does, and you're very, very well versed in all of the different things that we do. I do think it's true that we should be the nexus for this, based on where we celebrate the beginning of slavery through Emancipation Day and the end of slavery through Juneteenth. With our Emancipation Commission, we've been virtual for 2 years, but we have had quite a bit of programming, and we haven't been able to have our Emancipation Day breakfast, democracy breakfast, but we have had programming. This year, I think we had 2 weeks of programming where we had academics, community leaders speak on Emancipation Day. As far as the Martin Luther King Commission, we participated in a community peace walk, and we also participated in a few local breakfasts around the Martin Luther King Commission. But we usually have an event that commemorates that, but because of COVID, we weren't able to. So that's already 2 commissions. I think that there's synergy between the 3, of course. I think what's really great is we have a new archivist, state archivist, Dr. Lopez Matthews, who's an expert in Juneteenth. He speaks all over the country about Juneteenth. He's written a lot of papers on it as well. So I will give that extra plug, because it's not often that you have someone on your team that actually knows quite a bit about that. So yes, it'll be a lot, but I do think that we can do the best we can to make sure that this is carried out. As you know, our commissioners, we contact them through email and phone calls. We also practice open meetings, so everyone can participate. Everyone can see our commission meetings. Everyone can, chime in, give us suggestions. And I don't see anything being different in the Juneteenth Commission.
All right, so you're making it clear that the process that you're familiar with using is one where it's open to the public to not only observe, but the public can also have comment in
Yes.
the course of the meetings. All right, and so you're suggesting that the process is set up in such a way that the commission can do their work, but also very similar to an ANC meeting, you also receive comment from the public as a standard practice. Okay, can you tell us something about how frequently the MLK Holiday Commission meets and the Emancipation Commemoration Commission meets?
So we have to, oh, Dr. Lopez, how are you? He just joined us. What we do is around MLK, we usually start meeting at least 5 months before, and we meet every other week for that up to the planning of the commission. And then we, after that, we have another commission meeting to close it out so that we can talk about best practices, things we could do differently, and we do an evaluation of our programs. Emancipation Day Commission, again, we kind of start around 5 months before Emancipation Day. This year we tried to start, we did start, but getting momentum for our commissioners to actually get on the calls. They started really getting on the calls at least 3 months. So, you know, our office does quite a bit of the planning. They tell us what they want to do and we plan, but we also use them as like panelists. This year for Emancipation Day, we had them introduce all the panelists. Each commissioner had a role. Our commissioner on the Emancipation Day Commission are really amazing. They actually are historian, people who are interested in history. So they gave us suggestions for speakers. Some of them did research. And so we also marched in the Emancipation Day Parade, and we had enactors that came and participated with us. So we are small in numbers, but, you know, mighty. And
all right. You just mentioned that, if I heard you correctly, that you're readily in contact with the commission members, that you have weekly meetings, I guess maybe the month before, but certainly 5 months before the actual celebration day, you have regular meetings. And I'd like for you to give us some indication as what does that mean? Is it, you know, and how is that organized? And then you indicated that once the commission had determined its programming, you know, the activities it is to produce that is implemented by your office staff, and I guess contractors that you hire. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think we heard from the public witnesses their interest in a little more hands-on with the activities as opposed to, you know, deliberating, planning, and developing ideas and then turning it over to a government entity to make it happen. I think they want to be a little more hands-on. That's what I think I heard. So is that what you heard, or is that what you are thinking about?
That's what I heard. And I would love the support of those people that mentioned it. They're already commissioners, so I would love their hands-on support of what we do. Absolutely. As far as how it works, I think you said, how often do we meet? So what we do is we send emails prior. We tell, they know every meeting date. We send all the dates of our meetings ahead of time. Some commissioners write us back and they say they can't do it or they're not available. So we try to make sure that every meeting has a quorum. Once we figure out a date, we publish it, you know, with open meetings. It's on our website. All of our agendas are put on the website as well, on our website, and we promote the meeting. We also have to do phone calls to follow up with commissioners to make sure they're on. So in the initial 5 weeks, we start off with one meeting a month. 5 months, I'm sorry. We start with 1 meeting a month, then we go to 2 meetings a month, then we work our way. We go weekly, sometimes depending on what we're doing. So we definitely send follow-up emails to make sure they know they get the minutes of the meetings, and they also know like what we're planning and what the assignments are. Some commissioners, council member, are very hands-on and they want to participate. They want to help us plan. They want to volunteer. And others are just people that get on the phone for the meetings and give suggestions. And then some don't participate at all. So, the reason why we do this as a government, we take control, is because, we want to get something done, and we have to just have somebody that's going to be constant in the process, because we have to know that these people are volunteers and we really appreciate them. But to get things done, we have to, we have to take it on ourselves to get the ball rolling.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. You've given us some real feedback. You mentioned that some of the members of the current bodies, and that's the Dr. King holiday and the Emancipation Commemoration, are on the commissions, but they lack participation. I'd like to get that information from you, please, because it seems to me we want to check on that. But as we think about this this new commission, I wanted to really get a clear understanding of how you feel these individuals could participate. And I think you've given us some good ideas, telling us what you see the landscape to be. So I appreciate that very much. One other area I wanted to explore with you. Currently, as you know, Juneteenth is it's getting well known throughout the community. And as such, I wonder, do you have a way for individuals to be in touch with the fact that we in the district have declared it a holiday, as it is now a national holiday? I suspect that there are people who want to talk about it or say, how do I get in touch with one of the many groups, as you saw through our public witnesses today, that are involved in celebrating the holiday? Do you have a contact yet?
So no, I don't have a contact yet, but if this commission were to move forward, we would get contacts. Mr. Hicks is really good at keeping us up with what goes on in the community. Quite a few. Robert, we have a Commissioner Branham who's very active on the MLK Commission. He keeps us abreast of what's happening. We also get personal invitations from the community that want us to participate, want me to come and speak on behalf of Mayor Bowser, on behalf of the commissioners. And quite some of those, we have commissioners to attend and to speak on behalf of the commission. But we are very, very clear in everything we do. Even though I am the office of the secretary, we make sure commissioners have a voice. We make sure that they are present. We acknowledge them in everything we do, so that they feel a sense of belonging. And we partner with organizations that do things in the city. For Emancipation Day, Free DC has events. Quite a few organizations have events, and we partner with them. I think that our commissioners feel like if it goes to the Arts Commission, that there's more resources in the Arts Commission, where they would be able to, maybe have more staff, which I'm not sure about, but also more, resources as far as grants and those types of things. And so, I think that what we do, we do it well, and I'm very proud of our body of work. So for me, also in our office of the secretary, history is very important to us. We try to be very accurate in what we tell people in our community. That's why we have some of the best experts in the country to speak on our topics. We don't we have people that have written books who are award-winning orators, writers. So it's very important to us that outside of all the beautiful things that happen, the picnics, the cookouts, all of that, that we are giving out the right information and people know the historical importance of these holidays.
All right, well, thank you very much. Just to dig a little deeper, what are the budgets for your two commemorative groups that you do now, Dr. King Commission and the Emancipation Commemoration?
So we don't have budgets for them. Not right now.
Okay, all right.
So we don't
All
have
right.
budgets.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we have, not since I've been secretary, have had budgets for them.
Okay. So
However,
how are you doing these activities? How do you do the Freedom Breakfast? How do you do participation in the Peace Walk?
so everything is free for us, but we do work through the Office of Community Affairs. They manage a budget for Emancipation Day, and they give us money from that to do the breakfast. And that's where we get our money. Most of the time when we've done the MLK event, we have not had to pay anyone. So we usually use different venues that are already owned by the government of the District of Columbia. Even down to the auditorium at UDC or the public libraries, so we're very resourceful in that we don't use money. We just use our already government resources that are available.
Okay. And when you do the Peace Walk, do we need banners? I'm trying to, what I'm looking at is, as we think about this very broadly defined Juneteenth Commission and the planning of what it would do, just trying to have a sense of what we already do for commemorative activities and to see if there is some way of understanding what the budget might be. So that's why I'm asking this question.
So for the Peace Walk, that is not our walk. That is a group of people that organize it in Ward 8, and we just participate. We're just participants.
Okay. Yeah, but you mentioned it as the activity that was spawned through the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission. So is there anything that commission that is a part of our government really does?
Well, right now we have not in the last 2 years, but before we did have a program specifically for that, where we had speakers. They've had all types of speakers in the past, but because of COVID, we haven't been able to do anything in person. This year, we had a program planned at the Martin Luther King Library. MLK the third was going to be there. It was going to be really amazing, but it was the second outbreak that we had. So we had to postpone it, unfortunately.
All right. And so then when you had the speakers program, is it the Office of Community Affairs that provides you with budget for the speakers that come in, or you have some other source?
We don't. They come for free.
They come for free.
Yeah, we
lodging and everything.
Well, what we do is if a speaker's in town, what's really fortunate is that there is a non-breakfast that happens at the same time on MLK. So we have lots of civil rights leaders that already come in for that. So we try to pull from that group of people. They've already paid, so we use their resources, which is great. A lot of unfortunately, being in DC, we have congressional members that are already here and they speak. And so we use our resources that way. We have think tanks. We have so many.
So the printing of even an invitation for the speakers program is somehow absorbed this, so you just do not have a dollar amount that you spend on the Dr. King Celebration Commission?
We do programs, and we also have done different, flyers. That just comes out of my secretary budget. So any kind of printed materials comes out of our office, and we just
Okay.
absorb the cost.
Would you provide the committee with any information that you have as it relates to expenditures specifically on the Dr. King holiday? And likewise, the Emancipation Commemoration Commission, that would be very helpful as we think about what this new entity might, what the price tag might be. And I want to thank you for having Dr. Matthews join us. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him. You are our head of our archives, and I want to welcome you. So Ms. Bassett, I haven't sworn him in, so I'm going to ask Dr. Matthews if you would raise your right hand so we can swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you give will in fact be accurate and complete?
I do.
All right, well, thank you. And again, welcome to the District of Columbia. I know that the Friends of the Archives and the Archives Committee that was formed, they are just, inundating you with many thoughts, and that's all good. But I wanted to ask you, if I could, a little bit about the history. Ms. Bassett mentioned the history of the Juneteenth process. And I wonder if, since you had our archives, if any information is contained in our archives that would even suggest what the district was like during the Civil War, during the days after. I think you heard a little bit in the presentation by the historian as to what may have occurred. So I just wondered if we have anything in our archives that's been brought to your attention today.
We have a lot of information related to the Civil War era, particularly research on Frederick Douglass. He was very involved in district government before home rule was taken away in the 1870s. That's actually one of the reasons home rule was taken away, because of the very active African-American presence in Washington, D.C. in the late 1870s. So we have a lot of information related to that, a lot of information related to kind of the development of D.C. when it was controlled by the federal government, the administrative files, kind of documents relating to the people, the Black community in particular, because my focus is African-American history. So of course I gravitated to the history of African-Americans in Washington, D.C. I was actually, before we got on this call, I was looking at a document put together by Phil Ogilvie about chronology of events in the history of the District of Columbia. I was looking at that earlier. That's why it's sitting off on the side of my desk here, because I'm always thinking about things that we can do.
Well, I'm happy you mentioned Phil's name. He was a dear friend of mine. I have to put that on the record.
Wow.
He pushed so hard for the archives.
Yeah.
And so thank you for giving him a plug.
Well, I'm excited to be here and excited to read about his work. I've been doing a lot of reading about the development of the archives itself, just to kind of inform my planning on how to move forward and what we need to do and everything. So I've been doing a lot of reading about that over the past month. And so
the information that you are identifying would, I assume, be available to the commission, the Juneteenth Commission? Okay,
yes,
great.
Yes. Everything's available. That's when Secretary Bassett and I actually talked about the commission earlier. We just talked about how, we could be of support of the commission, and that is through these historical records and information that we have here in the archives,
All right.
A lot of Juneteenth celebrations, and I saw Juneteenth president said Juneteenth equals 4th of July. And so, it is, an important day in American history, and it deserves the respect and support that every other sort of freedom day in America gets. And so I'm excited to see that this is happening, and I was excited to be here and get the invitation. So.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly see it as a way of making sure that America and those of us in the district in particular remember that there was slavery.
Yes.
And that many of our monuments came about because of slave labor. And as we move forward, and we think about how we can transcend the slavery and the enslavers so that we have a more equitable society. I know that's all of our goals, so I appreciate your comments. Let me ask staff, have I saturated us with the right questions? All right, okay. Well, I want to thank you all so very much today for sharing your thoughts and your testimony, and on this important process that we are unfolding, and want to make sure that the public knows that if they have any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the legislation, please email it again to housing@dccouncil.us, and it will be included in the hearing record, which will close on Thursday, the 26th of May at 5 p.m. The next committee meeting will be tomorrow, Friday, the 20th of May at 10 a.m. We'll have a public roundtable on the nominations, a series of nominations for the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission and for the DC Housing Authority Board. And so with that, I can conclude our meeting today by indicating it is now 12:11 p.m. on the 19th of May, 2022, and this meeting is adjourned. Again, thank you to everyone who participated with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for